Welcome back to a brand new episode and series of Bike Fit Tuesdays. We're going to be filming quite a few videos today. First on the agenda, short nose saddles. Like this. Short nose saddles have become increasingly popular over the last few years. Today we're going to discuss why, who are they really for, and should you be riding one on your bike.
So a few years ago, I think it was probably Specialized with the first of the table with the Power, there was a bit of a radical shift in saddle design, and it was basically cutting off. The concept was to cut off the first few centimeters of a part of the saddle that really shouldn't really be used, shouldn't be sat on, and it resulted in this. The main philosophy behind it is it enables you to get the seating area of the saddle comparatively much further forward, while still conforming to the UCI's 5 centimeter rule. That rule is basically that the nose of the saddle cannot be it has to be at least 5 centimeters behind the center of the bottom bracket. It's basically a means of restricting and limiting how aerodynamic a position you can get. Thank you, UCI. Ultimately, the main goal was get the seat further forward, open the hips up, and allow a slightly more aerodynamic position, which for some people works, for a lot of consumers creates a lot of problems. But that's what we're going to explore today.
So I think it's fair to say that consumers don't need to follow the UCI rulings, but a lot of people still get good results from these saddles. You see a lot of them on women's bikes, Specialized Powers. I've seen those all over the place. Why are people getting good results from them? And why do you think they're using them in the first place?
Short nose saddles, they tend to have quite large pressure relief channels. I think it's important to understand that, or consider that if you're having saddle issues, it's probably not because of the saddle that you're riding. It depends on the saddle, but for the most part, most saddle issues are as a result of bad positions. The reason that most people are likely to get good results with a saddle like this is that it does have a very large pressure relief channel. Now, what that means is a lot of saddle issues tend to be as a result of genital or soft tissue discomfort, and generally most saddle issues tend to come about as a result of an asymmetric interaction with the saddle, i.e. your rider listing to one side. Now, the bigger the pressure relief channel, the more likelihood you have of actually hitting that pressure relief channel. Whereas you take a conventional saddle like this Pro Griffin, which is one of my favourites, you're less likely to hit that pressure relief channel than you are this one, which is almost double the size. So to be honest, I mean, the reality is I don't know, because I haven't seen absolutely everyone. I'm not a messiah, but there's a Monty Python joke there, isn't there, for the more senior viewers. My general feeling and attitude is that yes, they have a larger pressure relief channel, thus there's a higher likelihood of you actually hitting that pressure relief channel with your soft tissue. I don't think it's got anything to do with the lack of nose, because the reality is that the seating area is pretty much the same.
Does that mean you can recommend these for people, or what are the results that you've been getting when you've tried them on people in bike fits?
I'm finding that there are actually more negatives to this philosophy and design of saddle than there are positives. Mostly on the grounds, there were two things actually. And it depends on the saddle, but if we, sorry Specialized to point you out, but one of the main concerns I've had historically is the flare angle and the overall width of the thing. And to be honest with you, they are seemingly getting better, but one of the problems with an excessive saddle width is that it quite often results in you clipping the wings of it. And what that means is the rider ends up actually gravitating to the nose, which doesn't exist in the first place, so actually it ends up being quite problematic. So as a result, you end up with saddle issues, but you also end up potentially with neck and shoulder issues as well. So my point is that by trying to clear the width of the saddle, most people tend to sit slightly further forward onto the nose of a noseless saddle. That's one problem. The other problem is really about their intended application, and if we kind of go back to that UCI ruling about having to have the saddle at least 5 centimeters further back. Now, for a professional racing cyclist, I must iterate that probably works quite well. Let's think about how a professional racing cyclist is built. They've got virtually no upper body mass. What that means is that they don't really have to sustain that upper body mass. Now, and we have to have a brief talk about what saddle fore-aft, or the horizontal positioning of the saddle, actually influences. It influences a number of different elements. It influences hip mobility and hip function. It also influences, most in my opinion, one of the most important elements of it is it influences weight distribution. The further back you have the saddle, the more you load through the pelvis. The further forward you have the saddle, the more it opens up the hips, but the more it throws the weight into the front of the bicycle. Now, if you think about what I was saying about how a professional cyclist is built, all of their weight is below the waist. They've got virtually no upper body mass. They haven't got shoulders, they haven't got arms, they haven't got torsos. They've just got legs. Yeah. You then transfer that philosophy of pushing the saddle really far forward and apply it to a man in his 50s who sits at a desk all day and is carrying a few extra pounds. It don't work. Because all they end up with is a hell of a lot of weight and pressure on the front of the bicycle. And not only are there discomfort issues with that, i.e. you end up with numb hands, neck and shoulder issues, and inability to look ahead, there are also handling ramifications. You do not want lots of weight on the pressure on the front of the bicycle, because all it's going to do is create lots and lots of oversteer. The analogy I often use is, and some viewers might remember doing this as a kid, is when you've got your mate on the front of your bicycle when you're riding a bike. If you think about how I used to ride, you make a very small adjustment to the handling and the whole thing would dive. And the same can be said for having too much weight on the front of the bicycle. So this is one of the findings that we've had from using jigs and experimenting with positions. So saddle setback, and we have physiotherapists to thank for this. Historically in racing has always been, the concept has always been to push it as far forward as possibly can to open up the hips. The problem being there are lots of other ways of opening up hips: increase the stance, reduce the crank length, reduce the reach, all of these kind of things. But ultimately, going back to the short nose saddle thing, it really is about getting that saddle legally as far forward as you possibly can. And I think you should be asking yourself, well, are you racing? No. Well, in that case, leave it at home. Try a conventional saddle. I think that, the most popular saddle we sell is a traditional shape with a pressure relief channel. Cut out the middle of it.
What about that? I've been riding one of these. This is a Boost by Solitalia.
Boost.
Is it a short nose saddle? It's kind of halfway in between.
So this is what we're going to start seeing. Is like the evolution of the short nose saddle. Very, very short, kind of short, and then before we know it, we'll be right back where we started.
Unless you have to abide by UCI rules, mate.
How do you define a short nose saddle? At the end of the day, obviously it's short nosed, but this is a Pro Griffin and that Solitalia Boost that you were talking about. I think there's a 10mm difference. This is, I would call the Griffin a traditional or conventional saddle shape and design, whereas the Boost I think is probably marketed as a short nose saddle. We found, didn't we, that this is 10mm longer than the Power is. So the Power is 20mm shorter than most saddles, and actually the NDR is pretty similar as well from Pro Logo. And I have varying results with these saddles, but my general takeaway is that is usually a negative, almost always, in fact. But that doesn't mean to say that they don't work for anyone. They work for some people. This is the thing. You can't generalise in bike fitting. Everybody's different. All humans are different. I'd never say never. At the end of the day.
So that concludes today's episode of Bike Fit Tuesdays. If you're tempted to try out a short nose saddle, know why you're doing it. Don't try use it to medicate for an already existing problem with your position. But also, don't be afraid to experiment. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, leave a question down below for James and he'll do his best to answer them. Also, check the link down below to James's shop if you wanted to book a bike fit with him. He's based in London and he really knows what he's doing. What are you doing? He's spinning around on a chair.